welcome inside the state capitol for another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber. I'm your host, Rick Lord, and today we are going to be talking about PODAs, which are private outdoor designated areas. As the name implies, what this is, it allows establishments to set up specific areas where people can go inside, legally purchase an alcoholic beverage, then bring it outside to consume it. Now, there are rules in place, and we've seen this implemented already in certain bigger cities in West Virginia, like Huntington and Charleston. I believe Morgantown just passed an ordinance as well to allow this. But the devil is in the details, as always, and in the fine print, there are some things that needed to be tweaked. So this year, a new bill was just passed through the House, which makes some changes to who can partake in these PODAs, and also make some changes to the liability language, which has some delegates talking and brought up some concerns when it went up for debate on the House floor. And joining me now to specifically talk about that are two delegates from the House, Jonathan Pinson from Mason County and Wayne Clark from Jefferson. Wayne, you were the one who drafted this new bill that amends the original PODA bill that passed last year. I want to begin with you, Wayne. First of all, did I set that up correctly in terms of defining what PODAs are? I know that there's a lot of details that go into that, and it basically just allows cities to enact it with their own structure in place. But for the layperson who may not understand this, we're not talking about something like what you see in Las Vegas or New Orleans, where you go in, you crack open a beer, and you can just go outside and walk down the street.
Correct.
Very specific areas and certainly rules in place. So just go ahead and set up what PODAs are.
Yeah, so a PODA is an outdoor designated area that your municipality can set. They will sketch out where this is going to be within the municipality, what restaurants will be a part of this. And basically what it allows is, so when you're at a restaurant and you want to walk down the street to the next establishment and patronize them, you can ask for a PODA cup. It's a designated colored cup that the police understand, and all other establishments understand that this is a cup that's used to walk from one place to the other. I know some other cities are talking about using a wristband as well that signifies that they're properly aged, etc. So you ask for your cup, you walk to the next bar or establishment, restaurant. When you arrive, they are supposed to ID you accordingly to make sure that you are the legal person who purchased at the previous place. And then you can consume that while you sit down and order something else, another appetizer or another beverage, and then maybe you want to go back to the original place, then you ask for the PODA cup again. So there's a lot of safeguards that are in play. It's not like you're going to see, at a ballpark where you grab a special cup and you just walk around and just keep it a refill.
Right.
You're going to be ID'd every time. You're going to be, controlled, with by each establishment.
And it seems as though this is something that would set up well for certain events or certain with downtown in Charleston when they have like Restaurant Week or something like that. Because in times past, what you would have to do is you have to finish your beverage on the premises, yes, and then leave, then go.
Yes.
So this gives you a little bit of flexibility. Now, what we do see here in Charleston on the boulevard, they'll have events on the boulevard where they'll have tents set up and people will be selling alcohol. You get a wristband, and so there was already something like this in place, but this is certainly different than that. Just explain that difference.
So the difference is when they were doing those fairs, those festivals, etc., they actually had to rope off the area and make it a one-day beer garden kind of establishment.
So there's a specific license for that type of event.
Correct. So, and what this is going to do is, if the city wants to have it, and it's all permissive, the municipality can choose when they want to have it. They can choose the times they want to have it. Let's say they want to have it on a Saturday night from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. every Saturday. The sheriff's department or your municipalities, they don't have to block off the area with ropes. Because now we have these designated cups. Right. It's just a known factor that they can walk back and forth. Now,
this, again, originally passed last year. Your bill this year to amend it would basically expand it for certain fairs and festivals for multi-vendors.
I'm not going to say expand. And the reason why I'm not going to say expand is because there was a condition in there that we missed from last year. And what that is because the state of West Virginia does not have a dual license process, except for down at the Charleston. Sorry, I'm from Charlestown. So
Jefferson County guy.
Yeah. So the Charleston Civic Center, where they have an exception for a dual license. What happened is if your downtown organization, now ours is called Charlestown Now, or your Main Street organization wants to come in and do, say, a car show.
Right.
And they apply for the one-day S2 license. That's a special license for that car show. Then that suspended the PODAs.
Okay.
So we're like, well, this is going to be a
It's
problem.
almost a procedural thing.
Right. This is going to be a problem because we then have to go down and tell all of the bars and restaurants that are included. Remember, you can't sell today a PODA cup. And there's liability issues there. So, and so that was brought to me immediately back in June with our Charlestown Now organization and said, this is an issue. We can't have our car show. We can't have West Virginia Fest. We can't have these because we can't be dual licensed.
Maybe just an easy way to put it is when you would have that S2 or something, it would supersede the PODA. So it would basically eliminate the ability for them to do that.
Correct.
Okay, so this eliminates that.
Yeah, so and the ultimate goal of the PODA, especially when the downtowns are crowded, was to get people the opportunity to maybe sit outside, and not just be, 1,000 people inside the building.
Crammed inside, yeah.
Yeah, so this gets them outside, gets them an opportunity to the restaurant owner, the opportunity to sell more customers.
Now you bring up liability. I'm going to bring Delegate Pinson in on this because it does raise at least a debate when you're talking about multi-vendors in one place that would have shared liability. And I believe that was part of the concern from you and on the House floor was that, all right, business A, business B, business C, they're all in this together, and they have both individual and joint liability for this type of thing. If somebody gets overserved, it might not have anything to do with business A. It might have been business C that did it, but if they're all grouped together, then business A can be held liable. I know I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but I think people understand what I'm talking about here. And that there was some concern about, well, if business A had nothing to do with it, then why are we penalizing them?
Yeah, so Rick, that's a really good summary of my position and concern with the bill. And I would articulate that it doesn't only just raise the debate, but rather it raises a very serious concern. So it's common knowledge among my friends and colleagues that I serve with in the House that I despise alcohol. And I despise alcohol from a personal perspective. I despise alcohol from a professional perspective. 7 years of law enforcement, I've knocked on a bunch of doors and delivered terrible news, life-changing news to a lot of families. But also just from a statistical perspective. So in 2019, we see that there were, in West Virginia, in 2019, 1 out of every 5 deaths in West Virginia was caused by alcohol. In 2020, almost 2,400 arrests were made just in the last 6 months of the year, from July to December. And I could continue to go on with numbers. In 2021, the national average for drunk driving arrests went up 14%. I believe that alcohol is a problem. But my concern with this bill, and the concern that I raised on the House floor, is not just my distaste or displeasure with West Virginia expanding alcohol consumption. Like, I realize not everyone shares those concerns, nor do I expect everyone to share those concerns. The concern that I raise with what we have now done in the West Virginia House of Delegates is when this legislation was passed last year. We passed this legislation with my objection. We passed this legislation and we said that if multiple businesses were going to be license holders and were going to participate in this PODA, that everyone had skin in the game in order to make sure that folks weren't overserved and then getting out on West Virginia highways and roads.
Sort of like the old cliche, it takes a village, right? They help police themselves if they're all in it together.
That's exactly right. And the reason that's important, and I realize that some people don't articulate this the way that I believe that it needs to be articulated. The reason that that's important is because we're talking about an individual who's taking a cup and going to multiple businesses and drinking from multiple businesses, from multiple license holders. So in the event that someone participates in a PODA, is overserved, maybe overserved by multiple organizations, and then goes out and kills a fellow West Virginian, we get into this question of, well, okay, who's liable? Because maybe you only serve them one drink, and maybe the next business only served them one drink, and the next business only served them one drink. So in recognition of that concern, just last year we said that if businesses were going to be a part of these PODAs, then they had to sign an agreement that they were both individually and jointly liable for the actions that took place within the PODA. And now this year we have come back and we have said, you know what, we don't want to do that anymore. And while I understand why individual license holders, why bars would want that change, I don't believe the average West Virginian is going to be happy with the fact that we have lessened the liability on establishments who are potentially overserve folks.
What was the reasoning for making that change?
So, multiple reasons. One was we felt that a business should not be liable for another business making a mistake. And I appreciate everything that Jonathan has mentioned here. I love the man. He's been a true friend. But we who are ABCA permit holders, we have safeguards that are built in. With the shared liability process, the last person who serves an individual is the one on the hook. And your insurance companies, they don't want to have to come in and say, okay, who did it?
Conduct an investigation.
Right. They know you did it. You're liable. You individually are liable. Me, the business owner, I have an ABCA license. I'm the business owner. I am the one liable. It's not, Jonathan, you're liable too because I screwed up. He don't want that. He don't want that on his, that he didn't make the mistake, I did. And I can go a little bit further. And let's say that established B, where the person got their second beverage, sold them a beverage, and after that they ate, and it was an hour later they didn't have any more, and then they got in their car and they left the PODA, and they went to another establishment, and that's the one that put them over the edge where the accident was. I don't want those in the municipality in the PODA to be obligated for something that happened outside of it. So, that the severability of that agreement, and I'll give you another example of where this came into play last year. We had individuals that were West Virginia wineries that were going to wine shows. Now, the West Virginia wineries were not allowed to sell a glass or a bottle for someone to consume on the wine premise, but an out-of-state was allowed to do that. Well, they wanted the West Virginia wineries to sign an agreement that they were liable for someone else, and even though they couldn't sell. And they refused to sign the agreement, and because of that, they ultimately left the wine show. So when you're asking for someone else to be liable for someone else, we don't have that. That does not exist anywhere in our code, period.
I would articulate and use the word slippery slope. I would articulate that getting away from this joint liability is a slippery slope. And here's what I mean by that. Several years ago, before I was in the legislature, before Wayne was in the legislature made a decision, and states all across America have decided that if an establishment that serves alcohol overserves someone, they have liability in the actions of that individual when they leave the facility.
Yes.
I think that it seems like Wayne would agree that's appropriate. I would agree that's appropriate. I think most people would agree if an alcohol serving business overserves someone, they have responsibility in the adverse actions or decisions of that person. So what we're doing here is we're bringing multiple agencies, multiple businesses together who are serving alcohol. And now we are saying, you know what, there's not a joint liability. So what we have created is when someone's in that PODA, gets overserved, Wayne mentioned businesses don't want to be responsible for the actions of other businesses. I get that, and that's exactly my point.
So you're worried that it might bring up some gray areas where there could be plausible deniability, where you could say, you can't prove that I was the one that served.
There will absolutely be plausible deniability, because when something goes wrong, when someone gets out on one of our highways and kills an individual or a family, everyone's going to say, well, it wasn't me. And now we've created this plausible deniability, this game of, well, who's responsible, hot potato, well, I only served him one drink. And to the folks, to the family who deserves answers, to the family who deserves to be compensated for their loss, we've created this game of a goose chase of who's actually responsible for over-serving.
Are there numbers that show that these types of laws, these types of ordinances, these PODAs increase consumption of alcohol or irresponsible consumption of alcohol?
I don't think what you'll find is numbers that show that it increase alcohol. But now, because I have, if I'm a business that serves alcohol, if I have the opportunity to say, you know what, it was Wayne's fault, I believe what we will find is there's less concern with what my neighbor does and how that affects me. And that's the point that they're arguing.
But can
is
you police
but
personal responsibility from these businesses?
All right, and I know we have it in the PODA, okay? So let's take on days that the PODA does not exist, all right? So municipalities, like I said, they can choose when they want to have it. Let's say we're on a Wednesday and the city has a PODA available only on Saturday. Let's say we have a Wednesday and person goes to establishment 1, has a drink. Then goes to establishment 2, has a drink. Then 3, has a drink. Has 4, goes to 4, has a drink, and then leaves. There's no PODA here. Why do we need to have them in an agreement, okay, that everybody's liable when we know that, and the investigation's going to go through the process, and as a former officer, you know you're going to investigate the process. You're going to find out where that last drink was sold, and that's where you're going to go for your liability and say, hey, you were the last one that sold this individual. You know, we have the time stamps, we have the credit card stamps, we have the cameras, whatever it is that you're proving that. Why do we have it existing that way without the PODA? But then as soon as we have the PODA, and all we're doing is letting them walk from one to the next. Well, they're already walking from one to the next. We're letting them walk from one to the next with a drink. Boom. Now we're going to say everybody's under liability in this city. Wow. So we're changing the liability for a specific
valid point. And you know, you bring up a valid point as well, that, you know, you don't want to do anything that would not necessarily encourage, but at least give these businesses a chance to back off and say, well, but are we seeing that businesses, shouldn't they already, no matter whatever laws are in place, shouldn't businesses be responsible anyway and not want to overserve, not just because they're going to get dinged for it, but just because it's the right thing to do.
The right thing to do.
You're exactly right. And you asked the question, can we really police personal responsibility? And the answer to your question is, to a degree. We can police personal responsibility to a degree, and that's why years ago we said, if you overserve a patron, you're responsible. In these PODAs, what we have now done is we've now allowed multiple businesses to serve the same individual. And as a result of taking advantage of that PODA, I believe that the liability should be spread out, that everyone's responsible, because everyone is putting alcohol into that individual. So can we police personal responsibility? The answer is to a degree, and so much more if I have to be concerned not just with what I'm doing, but I also have to be concerned what the business next to me is doing. So with the passage of this bill, and if this bill becomes law, we can police personal responsibility less. There is no way to argue that by eliminating the joint liability, we have eliminated at least a level of liability on alcohol serving establishments in West Virginia And I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think the average West Virginian is comfortable with that.
So in 2020, would you have been in favor of all municipality bars, restaurants, and establishments filing a joint liability?
Well, see, what we're doing here is we're comparing apples and oranges. Because in an individual establishment, that individual comes into my establishment and he begins or she begins to order drinks. We have the opportunity in the privacy of that establishment to monitor their behavior and the level of their intoxication. But now what we're doing is we're bringing a crowd in where multiple businesses are infusing alcohol into people, and that's the difference. We can't say, well, every bar on the street has its own individual liability, and we don't do this for all the bars on Capitol Street, so why should we do it for a PODA? We specifically decided last year that it was the right thing to do, that it was good policy last year to do this for a PODA, because now all of these businesses are coming together, and by nature of the wristband or by nature of the cup, we're infusing alcohol into that individual. So if it was the right idea last year, if it was good legislation last year, the only reason to change it this year is because alcohol serving establishments want less liability. And with this bill, they get less liability.
So we already have the liability, and when someone walks into an establishment that's already overserved, you identify that right away. So they walk in and they're overserved, and you say, no, I'm not going to serve you. So then they go to the next place. I'm not going to serve you. And then they go to the last place and they're like, okay, I'll serve you anyway. That person is the person that should be liable, not me. I told them no. I'm not serving you. I don't care if you have a cup or a wristband or not. You're intoxicated. I'm not selling you another one. That is my job. That is what my insurance, that's my liability. That's what my bonds tell me I have to do. My training tells me I have to do. If they go to the last person and says, I'll sell you anyway, and they walk out and they do something wrong, that person should be liable, not me. I did my job.
Well, I think what we find is in these situations, business owners who serve alcohol, they want less liability. They want to be able to detach themselves from, you know what, that person caused damage to a family, caused damage to life or property, and I want hands off. And the interesting thing about this...
I mean, that's quite an assumption. To say that you believe all business owners are operating that way. They might...
Well, here's the thing. If there's a crash and there's serious property damage or someone's hurt or killed, every business owner wants to say it wasn't my fault. Well, I don't know of a single bar or alcohol serving establishment that's going to raise their hand and say, you know what, it was me, I did it. Every business owner wants to, at that point, step back and say, wasn't my fault. The interesting thing about this, Rick, though, is the original intent of this bill did not strike this language. That language, this section that struck joint liability, was an amendment that was offered in committee and, in my estimation, drastically changed the purpose of this bill. So the bill, as it was written, does exactly what Wayne says that it does. If an individual has a license and they want to also participate in a PODA, then those were in conflict, and I get that. I still wouldn't have voted for it, but I understand the technical flaw that was being created. However, when that single amendment was offered to strike the liability, the joint liability, this bill took a drastic turn for the worse.
Well, it got through the House. It's in Senate now, I believe, in Judiciary. Do you expect the language to get tweaked over in the Senate and come back to you? Where do you see this bill going from here?
I've been in communications with Senator Trump regarding the PODA bill, and I don't know. I mean, it's up to them if they want to put that language back in. I don't think anything's going to come out of. I don't think we're going to see any amendments. Because of the fact of we don't want other people to be on the hook for some bad apple. And I'll give you one more example. And
quickly.
Yes. So you're driving down the road and there's an accident in front of you, and you pull over as a witness. Should you be held liable for that? You weren't involved, but you were a witness, so you're there. So that puts you. Should your insurance have to make a claim?
Well, it's a very interesting hypothetical. However, by nature of participation in the PODA, you are involved. You have participated in the PODA so that you can serve alcohol. So I would articulate you are involved in this.
But I have the right to tell them no.
That's what this is all about, right? Debating
Yes.
these issues and figuring out how to compromise and make it work for everybody. I thank you, Jonathan Pinson, Wayne Clark. Appreciate your time, guys. And don't go anywhere, because coming up next, we have Kevin Baker. He's the city attorney from Charleston, who will be talking about the way that the city here has implemented PODAs in the capital city. Outside the Echo Chamber continues right after this.
Are you ready to unlock a future filled with remarkable pay, unbeatable benefits, and unparalleled satisfaction? Imagine embarking on a journey that offers you a college-level education without the weight of debt, all while earning a steady income. Look no further than the West Virginia Building and Construction Trades Apprenticeship Programs. Join us, and together, let's build a future that's brighter and stronger. Go to actwv.org to apply today. The West Virginia Building and Construction Trades, where the future is.
At CAMC, our focus has always been on building better healthcare for you. Our new Center for Learning and Research combines cutting-edge technology with hands-on experience for physicians, nurses, and other caregivers. Using specially designed simulation rooms and robotics with expert instruction, our learners expand their expertise. Because you deserve the most advanced care possible, now and in the years to come. Welcome to the future of medicine.
Fair warning, if you go after our kids and young people, I'm coming after you. As governor, I'll see to it that fentanyl dealers get a mandatory life sentence, and I'll put human traffickers behind bars for life. To help our communities hire and retain the best first responders, I'll increase pay and benefits, and we'll provide better training for our police and our firefighters and our EMS, the ones who put their lives on the line to protect ours.
Welcome back inside the state capitol as we continue our discussion on PODAs, PODAs, private outdoor designated areas. And joining me now is Charleston City Attorney Kevin Baker. The city of Charleston has implemented this following Huntington, which I believe was the first municipality to do so in the state. Just talk a little bit about what makes Charleston's ordinance unique and what you were able to learn from Huntington and how you've been able to implement this in a way that is good for everybody, both the businesses and the consumers, in a responsible way.
Yeah, well, we saw what Huntington did for sure, and we're watching, wanting to sort of let somebody else take the first shot at it, basically. And I think we did learn from how they rolled it out. One thing that Charleston really focused on was a larger area, and so our downtown PODA, the city center PODA, is pretty large in the size of it in terms of how many blocks are in there.
Right.
And we were hoping to get more people participating, and with the idea that if you could walk around to the different retail shops in the area, that might boost the economics of the whole downtown.
And that's one of the things that we were talking about with the delegates is that, just to put it in perspective, this isn't a Las Vegas or a New Orleans situation where you go into a restaurant, you buy a beer, and you literally walk down the street with your bottle. I mean, they have no open container laws in Vegas or New Orleans. Those laws still exist here. This is just kind of an exemption with rules in place. And talk a little bit about what you guys have implemented with the decal system and with the color coding to make sure that everyone's following the rules and that everyone knows what's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. So they have to drink the drinks outside in a special cup, and it's a clear cup that has the PODA logo on it, the Capital City Sip and Stroll logo, and each establishment is offered either one of three different stickers, basically. One is a red sticker that says, "Don't bring your drinks in here, please," essentially. One is green, which is where you can buy the drinks from, and the others are sort of a blackish gray that says, "You're welcome to bring your drink in if you'd like." And so the different retail establishments decide maybe they don't want you in there with a drink, or maybe they do, and that's up to them.
So there's some autonomy from these businesses as well, whether or not to participate.
Absolutely. It's definitely local control, essentially, right? For the businesses, for the cities, for everybody. So it's great.
What's the feedback been so far? I know this has only been in place for a few months now. Do people seem to be on board with it? Do you see this expanding anytime soon?
I think people are really excited about it. We launched right around the holidays, and so it was cold outside. I think there'll be more use when it's warmer.
Right, yeah, it is a private outdoor designated area.
Right. But that first weekend that we launched, like Black Friday weekend, basically, some of our establishments said they had the largest sales that they've ever had in a day. So we had a lot of folks in and out of the downtown area, and people took advantage of it to go around. Of course, we had a little festival going on at the same time, but there were a lot of folks, and people seemed really excited about it.
Anytime you're talking about something like alcohol consumption and loosening the rules in any way that you want to put that, I don't want to get too technical of whether or not this is loosening rules or regulations, but there's always a sense of responsibility in making sure that vendors and consumers, to a certain extent, are doing things the right way and not just going nuts here. So has there been any talk with businesses about best practices and ways to monitor this to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand? And I know that there are specific rules.
Absolutely. And when we talk to the businesses, they follow those rules all the time, right? So they're just going to have to be a little bit more cognizant. Maybe if they're giving somebody a to-go cup, that they know they can't watch them while they drink it. So maybe pay a little more attention when you're selling those cups than otherwise.
Yeah.
But we have law enforcement officers in the area too, and if you're publicly intoxicated and you're doing you're breaking any other law, we'll handle that the way that we handle any type of incident.
Yeah. In the first segment, we were talking about legislators, and Delegate Pinson brought up the liability issue, and that's been a point of contention. The bill did get through the House, but there was some big debate about striking the liability language for joint liability. You're a city attorney, so you're very you know about liability and everything that goes with it. Does that, in your mind, raise at least a little bit of a concern about, okay, how are we going to keep this buttoned up now if we're loosening restrictions on who's liable and who isn't?
I don't think so. I think it's a good thing to remove the joint liability because it will encourage other people to participate, whereas I think right now we've got some downtown establishments that maybe don't want to sign the agreement with some of the other establishments, that either they don't want to be liable for their actions, they're worried about those participants, or they just feel like it's an unknown why would someone want to participate if they may not serve a beer to the person at all, and that person goes out and does something. It's almost like a loss of control. Absolutely. Yeah. So I do think it's a good idea, and I think the reality is, if something were to happen, an incident were to occur, the person who's taken that lawsuit is probably going to name each establishment that the person bought a beer from. Not all of them, and not one and try to loop all of them into the mess, but they'll know where the person got the beer from, and they'll probably sue more than one.
Now, you mentioned Huntington, the first on board. Give me a couple things that you learned from them about maybe what to do and maybe more importantly what not to do.
Well, we loved their design for the cup. I think we kind of used basically the same cup with a QR code on it, and we had a different logo obviously, but just having the information available right there was good. I think that we actually looked to, I'm going to forget the name of the town, but a town in Ohio for the idea for the stickers and the colors of the stickers, which I thought worked out really well too. And then I think the biggest thing we saw is that for it to be successful, you need more participants. And so in Huntington, I think when they got started, there were just 2 establishments going, and we did a little bit of a site visit, some of our folks to check it out, and it just seemed like it didn't generate the sort of excitement that we were hoping for. And
it's tough in the infancy of things like this. You got to get that momentum going.
It is. And we were lucky to have a downtown businesses that were really interested in doing this. And so we were able to get those folks on the same page and start with about 8 or 9, I think, in Charleston downtown that were ready to go and interested in doing it. And I think that this bill will open it up in one way, because right now you have to sell liquor in order to participate in a PODA. And one of the changes in the bill is to broaden that to different types of licenses. So some of our breweries, our breweries that want to participate will be able to participate if the bill passes.
And on the back end of that, I believe the Morgantown City Council just passed their ordinance as well. Have they been in communication with you at all to learn from what you guys have done?
Yes. I spoke with the Morgantown City Attorney, and we shared some of our design and our ordinance with them. I have not looked at what they passed, so I don't know whether they followed our template or how they did it, but I was in communication with him, and actually they're interested in this bill as well, and I believe they agree with the concepts in the bill as well.
Always good to learn from other people's mistakes.
Absolutely.
And figure out how to do it better yourself. So I know that you said you've been watching this bill now into the Senate. Is there any specific language that the city of Charleston has been in touch with legislators on maybe some tweaks to make things better for everybody?
So our city manager, Ben Michaud, was in contact with some delegates as the bill was moving through the House. And at this point, I believe everything in the bill is the way that we want it. And so I'm going to convey to the folks in the Senate that, this is a good bill. We'd like to see it passed without further amendment. That's not to say there couldn't be other ways that it could be tweaked and improved, but based on the way it came out of the House, we think it's in good shape, and we think it will help improve the economic development in downtown Charleston and other places across the state that do it. One thing I'll say is when we created the downtown PODA, we also created one for the West Side and the Elk City area and one for South Hills and the Bridge Road area. And those haven't really gotten off the ground, in part because there weren't any establishments selling liquor that wanted to join in the joint and several agreement, or there just weren't any establishments on the West Side that qualified. But we have, there's the microbrewery over there that would be able to, or the nano brewery, I should say, that would be able to participate if they wanted to, if the bill were to pass. And I think that expanding that participation is just going to help, improve it for everybody.
Sure. And then would there be a way, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, would there be a way to maybe connect the districts where you could have some type of a trolley or something to shuttle people from Elk City to downtown?
Absolutely. I think that type of thing will happen as events occur, right? Around events, you'll see that more and more often, because that was one of the things that happened in the during the Light the Night. We had a trolley going from downtown Charleston to the ballpark and around to Capitol Market. And so I think we'll see things like that.
Seems pretty basic, but that is one of the things that can spark a rebirth of a city, is just giving people things to do.
Yep.
and entertainment and making it easy for them to have a good time.
Absolutely.
Responsibly.
Yep. And I do want to say, one of the things that goes unnoticed is all the work that city staff put into making those events happen. And it's definitely not me, but our employees work so hard during the seasons to really get those events going well. And we're grateful for them for sure.
Always good to earn brownie points by thanking the people that you work with.
They work so hard. They really do.
All right, Kevin Baker, City Attorney from the City of Charleston, talking about PODAs, and we will obviously watch that bill too as it goes through the Senate and see what happens to it. And we want to thank you for your time. We'll be right back to wrap up another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber after this.
At Dutch Miller Automotive, we've grown quite a bit over the last 60 years, but our core principles remain the same. We believe in treating our customers and our team members like friends and family. And we see it as our obligation to give back to all the communities we are so fortunate to do business in. In just West Virginia alone, we've grown from one location on the west end of Huntington to 10 rooftops employing more than 500 Mountaineers. Check out the inventory from all of our stores at DutchMillerAuto.com. Dutch Miller Automotive Group, West Virginia proud.
When it comes to surgical care, you want the best hands behind the robot. And those are ours. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
J.B. McCuskey is a lifelong West Virginian who has proudly served the state of West Virginia for years. He's running for Attorney General to keep fighting for our West Virginian values. Vote J.B. McCuskey for Attorney General on May 14th.
Welcome back inside the state capitol. That's going to do it for another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber. We want to thank our guests, Charleston City Attorney Kevin Baker and delegates Jonathan Pinson and Wayne Clark. But of course, we want to thank you as well for joining us, and be sure to join us again next Tuesday when we will have another Outside the Echo Chamber as we continue to talk about issues going on here at the legislative session that are important to you and your family. Until then, I'm Rick Lord. Take care.